Hi, my name is Leandro Facchinetti, and in this video, I'm going to answer one question that was asked in one of my videos. Angelo says, "Hi, Leandro, I love your sound. Would you mind sharing your effects chain?" So that's something that I was thinking about talking about. So I'm going to talk about this today, and thanks for asking this, and thanks for noticing. I'm glad that you like this because I must admit that I spent way more time tweaking the sound of my videos than I care to admit. I actually watched the whole YouTube about microphone technique and about effect chains and whatnot. And I know that it's not perfect. I'm not a professional, but it works. You liked it, Angelo, and I think other people like it as well. So I thought I would talk about this. I'm going to talk about this in three parts. First, the thing that I think is probably the most important part, which is the space. Second, I will talk about the gear, the actual equipment that I use to connect everything and what I use to record. And then I'm going to actually go into the effects chain itself, which is tailored for the kind of video that I do, for the space that I have, and for the equipment that I have. So you will probably not be able to just grab the effects chain and apply it to your own sound and have necessarily the best results, but at least it's a good start. So you can find a link in the description below for the effects chain in Reaper. You can just drag and drop into your signal and you can see what that sounds like. Anyway, let's first talk about the space. And I don't have an optimal space for recording, really. I record in this spare room in my house, and I don't like having furniture a whole lot, so I don't have any decor. I don't have shelves. I don't have anything going on in this room. It's just this black void, white void. So it sounds terrible. It's probably the worst space you can think about recording, especially this kind of small room, hard walls, hard floor, no carpet, no nothing. So there's nothing really to absorb the echoes in the space. It is probably the worst case scenario for recording. But anyway, I try to make it work. And one of the things that I do is before I start recording, I open all the closets. There are some wardrobes here in this room. So I open all of them. So at least the sound bounces in the shelves in the wardrobe. I don't think that helps much, but it helps a little. Here, check this out. So now I closed all the doors and I can hear a lot more echo in the room. I don't know if that translates into the microphone, and I don't know if you were able to hear that, especially because of all the processing that I applied to the signal right after recording, as I'm going to show you later. But that's the difference it makes just by opening or closing the doors. I think that makes quite a difference, really. So that's something that you have to think about. The thing that is going to influence your sound the most is the space in which you're recording. And sometimes you can save a lot of money by having a better space. So you just put some pillows around or you open the doors of some wardrobe and you have better sound instead of having to spend money in new equipment or in new effects. As we are going to see, the effects that I use are kind of expensive. Another thing that may help is not standing in the corner of the room, which is exactly what I do. I stand in the corner of this room. I really like how I can open the door to this space and it's wide and open. But in terms of bouncing around, the sound will echo in this, it will reflect in these walls, and I'm right where the sound reflects. So I get the artifacts that come from this. It's not ideal, it's not perfect. It's a compromise. I do use this space for working as well, so I think it looks nice, and I think that outweighs the problems with this sound. Next up the list is mic technique. That is going to influence your sound a whole lot, way more than effects can do later in post-production. So what I do is I stand very close to this microphone, and it does a good job of reducing the noise in the room and the noise everywhere else in my house. I have sometimes the baby crying and I'm recording and it doesn't pick up, and my wife is taking care of the baby, don't worry. She will be asked later to come in and review the sound. She had to listen a whole lot of comparisons. Do you like this or that? Should I use this effects chain or that one? And she was always like, okay, you're tweaking the sound too much. Stop muddying the sound by how much effects you're applying. Anyway, so the thing is, my technique speak as close to the mic as you can. And in this situation where I'm recording video, it's not ideal to have the microphone in the shot. I don't really like this, but it's something that many people do. And I think that the benefits to the sound outweigh the weird thing that is standing in front of my face when I'm recording, especially when I go to the corner like this, and then I am much smaller, so the microphone is much smaller. It's still on my face, but I think it's less annoying that way. Sometimes when I'm recording just with the camera, I do move the microphone slightly away from the frame. But yeah, for this video, I'm going to leave the mic here because I think that the closer you are to the microphone, the better. Especially in a situation like this where I don't have a real studio, I'm recording in a spare room, so I do have to get rid of a lot of noise. And I think that the best lesson here is that you have to experiment a whole lot. I thought that I would watch some videos on YouTube, pick up the techniques, and then start recording. No, not really. I wasn't satisfied with the sound. For a while, I had to experiment a lot. I'm not proud of the sound in my first videos in this channel. I'm still not super happy with the sound that I have right now. I think I will tweak it in the future. I am thinking about things that I could buy, and it's always fun to do that. But anyway, you have to experiment a whole lot. It's not something that you are going to pick up overnight. And it all depends on the space that you have, the room that you have, how you speak, and what kind of effect you want. So it takes a lot of time, and you have to do it. There is no shortcut. You can watch as many videos as you want. You'll never pick up all the techniques, and the best lessons you can learn are those you teach yourself. So you need to experiment, you need to try a lot, and you need to just keep recording, and don't be afraid to publish the things that you are not super happy with. At least you did something. It's better than, and it's something that I'm guilty of, experimenting over and over and using that as an excuse instead of creating. So do experiment, but also create. Find that balance. It's kind of hard, but it's challenging and fun, and it's part of the experience. Anyway, let's talk about gear, because that is fun. So the first thing is this pop filter or windscreen that I have right here. It makes a whole lot of difference. Here, check this out. Without the pop filter, I think you will be able, I'm not sure because I do use some processing later to try to mitigate this effect, but you will be able to hear that I pop the microphone a whole lot. That sounds super annoying, and I am especially prone to producing a lot of air when I am speaking. The P's and B's, and you probably heard this before in other videos, but yeah, do use one of these. They help a whole lot, and there is only so much you can do in post-production. They do muffle the sound a bit, so I think that my voice is clearer and brighter when I'm not using the wind filter, but it's a whole lot annoying when you hear those p sounds. So this helps a whole lot when you put it in the microphone. And also, I think it kind of looks nicer on the video. If I have to have a microphone in front of me, I do think this looks better. And I'm not singing. When I'm singing, I don't use a pop filter like this because I tend not to produce as much P's and B's when I'm singing. But when I'm speaking, I do that a whole lot. So I use the pop filter. And I'm not a singer. So this is the kind of setup with this kind of microphone that you would see with the singer. So I'm not singing. So I put the windscreen on. Next up is the microphone that I use. It's one of the most used microphones in the world. It's a Shure SM58, and it's used all over the world a whole lot for a reason. It's super inexpensive when compared to other professional microphones. It is very durable, it is reliable, the sound is good. Even if you are using it handheld like I am right now, it doesn't pick up a lot of handling noise. So I can move my hand here and you probably will not be able to hear that a whole lot. But I guess the most important thing about this microphone is that it's a dynamic microphone. So it rejects the sound in the room and the reflections a whole lot better than other microphones like condensed microphones like the Blue Yeti that everyone recommends. I spent some money on the Blue Yeti and it was picking up the cars across the street. Not nice. And I would have to lower the gain and try to fix things in post. Not fun. A dynamic microphone is the way to go if you're recording in a space that is not optimal. And if you're watching this video, you're probably in that situation. next up the list of gear is the mic stand, and I'm super proud of this one because I kind of made it myself. So what I did is I went to IKEA and I found this lamp. It's called Forza, and I found it here in Portugal, but I think it's sold all over the world. The catalog of IKEA is pretty much the same everywhere. And it's a lamp, but it has first this sturdy base, and then it has this arm that is flexible. And then, of course, there's the lamp here, but right here, you can just take off this screw right here, and then it becomes the perfect mic stand for your desk. And I'm super proud of finding this out myself. All I had to do was just take the screw off, and of course I cut the cord here and I took it out. It's super easy to do. And you have the perfect desk mic stand with a swiveling arm like this. I couldn't find any other option around. Even with pro mic stand gear, they usually clamp to the desk instead of having a base like this. And I prefer a base like this. So it works better with the rest of my setup. I can just take it away when I'm not using it. It's a lot better. Also, I am proud of doing this other thing I'm going to show now. So yeah, next in my chain of recording is a Zoom H5. It's a perfect audio recorder when you are on the go, and that's why I bought this one. I used to have the Scarlett 2i2, and before that the Scarlett Solo. They work great, but you cannot take them with you and record anywhere you are. And I did record podcasts with my wife before on the beach and in the park. So having a portable recorder like this is super handy. It's more expensive, but it sounds good. And I think it's even better for this kind of microphone that I'm talking about, these dynamic microphones like the SM58. The thing about the H5 is that I need a lot less gain to drive this microphone that I needed in the Scarletts. I had to drive the Scarletts almost to 10 to get a good signal, and that would introduce some hiss. But this preamp seems to be a lot quieter, and I don't have to drive it as hard. But also, I'm super proud of borrowing a hair tie from my wife, and I placed the audio interface right in the mic stand, in the IKEA mic stand that I made. So it's out of the way, it's along with the microphone, so I can take the whole recording setup and put it anywhere I need. And yeah, so I'm super proud of coming up with this idea of just tucking the recording interface right into the mic stand itself. And that is the H5. Two things to note about the recording here. The first is that I'm recording at 48 kilohertz. If I need to record a podcast or something, I will probably downsample when I'm exporting to 44.1 kilohertz, but for recording, I always record in 48 kilohertz for video and audio. And of course, when I'm producing video, I export in 48 kilohertz as well. That's the standard for video. And the next thing is the gain. So that's super important. In my case, I have a gain of 5. It works well for my voice as well as for my wife's voice. But the thing is, you can see that the peaks here are very low. It's around minus 18 dB. And sometimes even lower. Yeah, I think the maximum it goes is minus 18. It's between minus 18 and minus 32. And if you look at this scale, the gain looks super low. But the thing is, if you go any higher, then you are going to risk clipping. When you speak something just a little bit louder, you will clip. And this scale doesn't do justice to the effect that you will have when you are recording. So it looks like the gain is super low, but actually it works. And as you're going to see here in Reaper, in the FXChain, I do make up for this low signal, and it works better than trying to increase the gain here and then clip. And then, of course, the next thing up the chain is Reaper. I'm recording into Reaper right now, and I'm going to show you the things that I do with the signal chain, which is the original question you asked. So I'm going to go through all the effects in my chain, and I will explain why I'm using them the way that I'm using them. But before I do, let me just put in some clicks. I am prone to clicking when I speak. I do. So I'll do something more realistic, like, but yeah. Well, so then, And that's the sort of thing that I do, and it annoys the hell out of myself in the future when I'm editing. And another thing I'm prone to is, as I said before, P's and B's. P's and B's. So we'll try to look at them when we are doing the editing. So I'll stop recording this audio in this right now. I'm also recording in Reaper in another instance. That's what you're actually hearing when we do this. So the first thing I do with the audio that I have here is normalize it. And I do it for two reasons. And hear me out, I'm not normalizing the way that people usually normalize when they say normalizing. What I'm doing instead is I'm using a Reaper action that comes with SWS that is to normalize to minus 23 LUFS. So usually when people say that they are normalizing the signal, they mean that they are going to take the highest peak in the sound, and that will become the loudest possible noise. So that will become 0 dB FS, the loudest possible noise in an audio signal, a digital audio signal anyway. So that is not what I'm doing here. What I'm doing is just normalizing to minus 23 LUFS, which is a measurement of loudness. That it means roughly that I'm taking this and putting it on a level that two things happen. First, I'm going to do it right now. First is super important for editing. I can actually see the wave because I'm recording super quiet. As I said, I'm reaching minus 18 dB, so this is super quiet, and I'm barely able to see the wave when I'm editing, and that's annoying. So I could zoom into the wave in Reaper. It's one of the few editors that allow you to do that, but you can zoom into the wave, but it's a lot better to actually see the wave as it is without having to artificially zoom in. So that's a good thing. But the other important thing is that the effects that are going to go in the FXChain, they depend on a certain loudness to work. Things like compressors, they need a certain amount of signal to actually work. And putting the thing to minus 23 LUFS gets you to that sweet spot where the effects work very well. And if you just hear this, you will see that sometimes when it's particularly loud, it may go near zero or it may even clip. The thing is, we are going to put effects in the chain that are going to work, first of all, because if an effect in the chain lowers the signal, it will not distort. Internally, Reaper keeps track of the audio signal with more resolution. So even if your audio seems to clip, if you have an effect, it has that signal to work with. And if it lowers the signal by compressing or limiting, you will not have any sort of digital distortion. It's not ideal to work with signal that is clipping along the FXChain, but it is something that you can do, and that's what I do. It only clips every so often. It doesn't even clip, I think, in this whole clip. So maybe if I just hear this. Chain is Reaper. I'm recording into Reaper right now, and I'm going to show. Yeah, so it's not even clipping right now, you can see, and it barely ever clips, but even if it does, it's not a big deal because we are going to put a bunch of stuff in our FXChain. So I have the FXChain right here. I'll drop this there, and it takes a while because, as you can see, I'm putting a lot of things in the chain, so it takes a while to load. Another thing I always do is I go to the master. So I'll come here to the mixer in the master, and I put this chain in the master. And we are going to go through every effect, and we are going to hear the effect that they have. So for now, I'll disable the master effect chain, and we'll go over all that is happening here one at a time. So first, I will disable everything, and we can hear the signal dry, and we'll put the effects in order. I'm going to put the effects in the order that I think they, from the most relevant and the most important to the least relevant, the least important. So let's start by hearing a clip. Up the chain is Reaper. I'm recording into Reaper right now, and I'm going to show you the things that I do. So the first thing you're going to notice is that it's not loud enough. So I normalized to minus 23 LUFS, which gets me a healthy signal to work with. I can see what's going on here, but it's still not at the standard that YouTube expects. YouTube wants your sound to be not at minus 23 LUFS, but at minus 14 or minus 13. There is a link below for a list of different platforms and the loudness that they expect. And if you are not in that loudness range, they will compress your sound to make it that loud, or they may even boost the gain or lower the gain on your sound. Ideally, you deliver the sound that is roughly at the level that they want. That depends on the platform. For YouTube, it's minus 14 or minus 13 LUFS. For Apple Music, I guess it's minus 16. Don't quote me on that. But there is an article, and these things keep changing. Sometimes the platforms change the loudness that they expect. And as far as I can tell, there is no official document from YouTube. It's just lore. People around the internet just know that it's supposed to be minus 14 or minus 13. So what we're going to do first, and I think that it's one of the things that affect the sound the most, is use this effect. It's by Sonic Anomaly, and you also find a link in the description below to download this. It's available in Repack, but not in the default repository, so you have to come to Repack and you have to import a repository for Sonic Anomaly. That's the one I have right here. And this effect is great because it is a leveler, so it's like a compressor in the sense that it's going to compress sounds that are too loud, but it's also going to bring up sounds that are too low, too quiet, so that it reaches this target of minus 14 LUFS. And if I was doing a podcast, I would lower this to, I think, minus 19 or minus 16. I don't remember exactly. You have to check the link below for the table, but you just change this to get to the level you want. So my level right now is at minus 23, and this is going to bring it up to minus 14. And you may be thinking, well, why didn't you just bring it to minus 14 to begin with? Well, the thing is, this is not only taking that sound and normalizing it. When I say normalize, what Reaper is doing is, it's that SWS action I ran before. What it's doing is just taking the volume knob on the track, on the item really, and increasing it so that it gets to minus 23. But it's doing that for the whole track. And that's not what I want in this case right here. What I want here is for it to increase and lower the gain, adjusting the gain according to what I'm saying. When I'm saying things that are louder, it's going to decrease the gain. And when I'm too quiet, it's going to increase the gain, but it's going to react to my voice. So to begin with, just to have a healthy signal to work with, I normalize to minus 23 dB, but then I take the tri-leveler to bring it up to the standard of the platform I'm distributing in. That's YouTube, minus 14 LUFS, but it's doing that, adjusting to the sound of my voice. So that's what a leveler does. It's like 3 compressors working in series. I think that's what is happening here. So there is a fast compressor, a medium compressor, and a slow compressor. There is also a gate that gets rid of sounds that are too low, because if you're not saying anything, it should not try to increase that volume to get to that minus 14. When you're quiet, you're quiet. So anyway, let's hear the sound of the tri-leveler and hear how that affects our signal. And then, of course, the next thing up the chain is Reaper. I'm recording into Reaper right now, and I'm going to show you the things that I do with the signal chain, which is the original question you asked. So I'm going to go through all the effects in. So that makes a big difference. The loudness is one of the things that we use to when we say that a sound is better than the other, it sometimes just means that it's louder than the other. So loudness is super important. It's going to affect how you are perceived a whole lot. That's why I'm showing this first, though it's not first literally in the chain. It's actually in the middle because there is also the master chain. So it's in the middle, but it is the thing that I think affects your sound the most. So when I'm doing this A-B comparisons, I always start with the compressor because I know that I will not be fooled by just louder sound. And because this is a leveler, even if something in the chain is affecting the loudness, this will try to compensate for that. So I think this is the best effect to begin with. The tri-leveler, super great. For free, you can just download from Repack. Sonic Anomaly, super generous for doing that. Awesome effect. Anyway, next in the chain, well, actually previously in the chain, but more importantly, the next thing that I think is more important is my EQ. So what I'm doing here with EQ is pretty aggressive, as you can see. And I'm taking just things off. I'm never boosting anything, never goes above the bar. I'm always taking things off. What am I taking off? Well, I can disable all these other bands and we can hear one thing at a time. So the first thing I'm taking off is everything below 100 hertz. So this is a typical thing for people to do because the sound of the voice doesn't really have information below 100 hertz. In fact, this is always just rumble in the room, and I don't think I am able to actually hear the effect that this high-pass filter has on the voice. But everyone says that it's a good idea, so I do it too. Let's hear this. So I'm going to go through all the effects in my chain and I will explain why I'm using them the way that I'm using them. But before I do, let me just put in some clips. And that's another thing I should mention. I'm hearing this in these in-ear monitors. And when I was doing all these A/B comparisons and everything, I noticed that I also have studio monitors here, and I know that I don't have an ideal room for having studio monitors, but I wanted to have studio monitors, so I have them right here. And I sometimes would say, oh, okay, this sounds okay, this sounds good. And I would put this on, and I would notice that, oh my God, it's so artificial. I went overboard with some of my effects. So maybe it's because I am not a pro, or I don't know exactly what happens, but everyone says that you should monitor with studio monitors and never with these guys. But I find that these are a lot better. They give me a much better picture of what's going on, especially when I go overboard with effects. And I want to hear the effect, right? But it's all about subtlety. When you're changing the voice, you don't want to be artificial. You don't want to change things too much. So I think these are better for monitoring these kinds of things. And I then use the studio monitors to do other things like music, or when I already tuned in the effects that I want, then I can use the studio monitors just to edit, because having this for a long time in your ear is kind of annoying. Anyway, so that's the high pass filter. It is super subtle. I don't think I can hear that at all. I don't hear any rumble in the recording to begin with. But these other bands here, they are much more aggressive. They are doing a whole lot more. So what's happening here is, on this last one, there isn't much information around this. After this range, after 15 kilohertz, there isn't a lot in the voice, and it's usually just noise in the room, so I take that out as well. And then in these bands in the middle, I take a good amount off, and this is unusual. Everywhere in the internet, I always saw people taking off the low end and the super high end, but they usually don't mess with this part in the middle that much. What I found is that doing this gets rid of a lot of the echoes in the room. So I picked this up from a preset in another effect that is, I guess, an expensive effect by Isotope called Nectar for voice. So I tried that. I didn't really like the effect. It was just not producing any better results than this EQ, and it was a lot more taxing on my machine. But it had this preset for voice that did this, something equivalent to this, and I just copy and pasted most of the values, I think. And you can copy and paste from here, or you can use the FXChain link below. But the thing is, with this, it gets rid of a lot of the echoes in the room. So let's see if we can hear the effect that this has. And then, of course, the next thing up the chain is Reaper. I'm recording into Reaper right now, and I'm going to show you the things that I do with the signal chain, which is the original question you asked. So I'm going to go through all the effects in my... Now, you tell me, I think that this clears the voice a lot from the echoes in the room. You can hear their voice a lot more front and center with this EQ, especially because it's taking out these middle frequencies. The high pass here in the beginning, the low pass here at the end, don't do as much as these three bands in the middle. And you can see that they are somewhat gentle. They are 4 dB, 5 dB. No, they never go to 5. It's always 4.2. So they are not that aggressive. This graphics makes it seem like you are taking a lot out, but you are not. It's like that bar in the H5. It makes it seem like you are taking out this you are recording too quiet, but actually you are not. So the visual isn't, I guess, it doesn't do much justice to what's going on. Anyway, don't quote me on this. I'm not a professional. But anyway, so now we'll talk about the effects that are expensive. So I'm using these as just sprinkles on top. They are always in the gentlest settings ever, but I do find that they help. And if you have access to them, great. If you don't have access to them, there are free alternatives. Even in Reaper, you can use things like Refear instead of voice denoise. You see that in the internet. You can just Google for other videos, search here on YouTube about using Refear to get rid of the noise. But anyway, let's talk about all these effects. And I had to read the manual to find out in which order I should put them. And you can argue that doing this much in the effect chain actually degrades the sound, but that's what I'm doing. I kind of like it. Anyway, so in the end here, I remember to say some clicks. So I'll try to show you how RX can get rid or try to get rid of those. Sometimes it introduces artifacts that are even worse than clicks, but most of the time, RX does the right thing for P's and B's. And another thing I'm prone to is, as I said before, well, so like, but yeah. Well, so then, and that's something more realistic, like, but yeah. Well, so then, yes, it did not get rid of these first two. They were too aggressive, but this last one, I guess it helped. So let's see without and with. And that's, yeah, it is a lot quieter, if not gone completely. So this helps a lot. I'm using this preset that is transparent removal. It is the gentlest preset I could find. And by reading the manual, I learned that the declicker should probably be at the end of your RX section in the FXChains. So you can see that the order that these things are going is, first I'm trying to clean things. So RX is this isotope plugin that tries to clean the voice, taking rid of plosives, of clicks, S's, and so on. So the first thing I do is I try to clean things. The re-EQ is also cleaning things. It's taking out the noise in the room. And then, only then, I try to play with dynamics. I try to increase the volume to get to a certain level and use compressors and gate and so on. So I'm trying to clean. The idea here is I'm trying to clean the sound. And I learned from reading the manual for RX that some of these other effects may introduce clicks by the way that they work. So a mouth declick can go less, or it should go less in this part of the effects chain because it's trying to get rid of the clicks of your voice, but also some of the clicks that may have been introduced by other effects previously. And I use mouth declick. There is also just a declick, and I think that because it has mouth in the name, it's probably better for voice. That's kind of a joke. But anyway, mouth declick is, I think, better for voice because it tries to hone into those sounds. I hope you have not listened to this. I hope that the mouth declick that is running on my voice as I speak to you right now got rid of those clicks. And I'm using transparent removal because it is not touching the sound a whole lot. And then, so yeah, let's go to this one because I also think that this one makes a whole lot of difference in the sound. And it has to come first. According to the manual, the deep plosive needs to come first because some of these other effects, particularly the voice denoise, and I guess the de-esser to some extent, but particularly the voice denoise, will try to remove the noise. And along with the noise, it will remove some of the information in the low end that the deep plosive needs to work. So the deep plosive needs to come first because it needs the information that is in the noise. And then the mouth declick needs to come last because it's getting rid of clicks that may have been introduced as artifacts along the way. So let's hear those P's that I introduced intentionally. And another thing I'm prone to is, as I said before, P's and B's. P's and B's. For P's and B's. P's. Yeah, P's and B's a whole lot. So let's see what the deep plosive does to that. As I said before, P's and B's. P's and B's. So we'll try to look at them. Yeah, to be honest, I don't hear a whole lot of difference, and that is also because I'm using light removal, the preset. I'm always using presets in most of these things. In the tri-leveler, the only thing I changed from the preset that loads when you load the plugin is the target. And in EQ, that one I had to change a whole lot. But only in all these other ones, I'm using presets because I'm not a pro. So in the deplosive, I'm trying to do this as gently as I can, and it didn't do a whole lot to these intentional P's and B's. And that's because when I tried to get rid of them, the deplosive would introduce artifacts everywhere else. And that was more annoying than an occasional P and B that got through. Anyway, as I said before, P's and B's, P's and B's. For P's and B's, P's and B's. I want to say that it's slightly less annoying with the deplosive on, but it's not doing much in this case. At least I think in the long run it does a good job, especially when you're not intentionally popping the microphone. So yeah, next, breath control. I breathe a whole lot on the microphone, and I did that on purpose when I was recording. So I'll do another recording here because it's something that I do a whole lot. When I'm recording, I usually say, and then I say something. I always do that. It's super annoying. So I recorded that. Let's hear that. Oh yeah, I will normalize it. So I have a shortcut to normalize because I do that a whole lot. When I'm recording, I usually say, and then I say something. Do that. I always do. So yeah, now let's take the breath control out. When I'm recording, I usually say, and then, oh, did you hear that? Oh, yeah, you didn't hear this one, hopefully. But, oh, it annoys me so much. I know that it's natural to breathe, and then if you take out all the breaths, it is more artificial, and you may introduce artifacts, especially if you're doing that automatically with an RX plugin instead of doing that manually. Some people do that manually, which is feasible if you're recording a song, but not feasible if you're recording videos. But breath control gets rid of that. It worked really well in this case. Let's hear that again. When I'm recording, I usually say, and then I say something. Oh, I hate that. When I'm recording, I usually say, and then I say something. This one worked very well. It got rid of that breath. You can still hear the beginning of the breath, but it's the part that I think is natural. It makes for a better vocal. I really hate the super loud one. I hope you haven't heard this one because I'm processing this whole video. The voice that you hear has been processed with this exact chain that I'm showing. Okay, so next, in terms of the things that affect your signal chain the most. Voice denoise. So that one is also trying to get rid of the noise in the room along with the re-EQ. So let's hear without and with. I will start with, oh, and the preset I'm using again is light, always light for dialogue, but the lightest, most subtle thing you can. And that's the sort of thing that I do, and it annoys the hell out of myself in the future when I'm editing. And another thing I'm prone to is, as I said before, P's and B's, P's and B's. So we'll try to look at them when we are doing the editing. So I'll stop recording. Of course, the next thing up the chain is Reaper. I'm recording into Reaper right now, and I'm going to show you the things that I do with the signal chain, which is the original question you asked. I don't hear a whole lot of difference here, and I guess that's a good thing. It is getting rid of some of the room. I think that it's less echoey, but it's not aggressive. It's super light. And if I have things like right now, I'm recording this on my laptop, which isn't the fastest, and the fan is on because it isn't the fastest. But with a dynamic microphone and some of this denoising, you won't be able to hear that fan going off. I hope. And then there is the DS. Another one of those things that people say I should use, so I do. Now, to be honest, I can kind of hear a difference, especially because I tend to speak with P's and B's, but I also tend to speak with sh. So a de-esser helps there. I don't know if I did that in the recording. Of course, the next thing up the chain is chain. Yeah, so let's hear that. Up the chain is Reaper. I'm recording. Next thing up the chain is Reaper. Yeah, it did activate in that chain. Next thing up the chain is Reaper. You see that? So it activated there. Again, I'm using something super light, basic reduction. This one, I think, introduces some artifacts if you go overboard. Very fast, actually, it introduces artifacts. So I'm putting this in the lightest setting I can. And It does get rid of some of the annoying shh, especially by the end of the phrases. But I want this to be subtle. And that's another thing. When you go watch videos on YouTube, people always say, oh, you should do this and that. And they go and show the before and after. And I'm like, maybe the YouTube compression is getting rid of the difference, but I cannot hear the difference. And in some of these cases, I cannot hear the difference. But people say I should do it. So sometimes I don't. Sometimes I cave and I do. And the de-esser is one of those. Maybe I could take it off, but I kind of think that it may help or it may hurt. I don't know. Now let's go to the master effect. It's super simple. The thing I'm doing first is I'm getting rid of anything that peaks. So this is a limiter. It comes with Reaper. It's super simple. The only thing I had to do was to change these two settings, the threshold and the limit. And people say that you can go to minus 0.1 and minus 0.1. So if you keep the threshold and the limit always together, if they are always the same, then what this limiter does is it doesn't try to make your sound louder, because a limiter may try to make your sound louder to reach a certain level. But we already did that with the tri-levelers, so we don't need that function. The only thing we need is to get rid of peaks. So if something goes over a certain level, we want it to be compressed. We want it to be limited, really. We don't want to hear that clipping ever. So some people say that you can go to minus 0.1. I think it's a lot safer to be at minus 1 dB. So I always put my peaks at minus 1. And because I'm putting the threshold and the limit on the same level, so the threshold is when the limiter starts to work, and the limit is the maximum sound that should go through. But I'm saying that they are both the same. They are linked. So the threshold and the limit are the same. It means that the limiter is just activating when it goes over minus 1, and it's bringing it down, a brick wall limiter, bringing it down to minus 1. So I never go over minus 1 dB, and I'm never clipping even if I do something really loud. And then I have this other one here. This doesn't do anything to the sound. It's just a measurement tool. The link to download this is in the description below as well. And what this one is doing is super simple. It's just showing me the level. So I said before that it should be minus 14 LUFS for YouTube. And this one is showing me if I'm getting there. And the only one that I'm interested in is, well, there are two. The integrated loudness in LUFS. That's when we say minus 14 LUFS, we mean integrated loudness. And there are these other like momentaneous loudness, and we don't care about those. And then there is the true peak. So the true peak is the loudest thing that is going through. And I said that the true peak should be minus 1. In fact, it's going to be something like minus 0.9, which is okay. The thing is just we don't want this to be any louder. And we want this to be around minus 14. So we can just play some of the sound and look. Of course, the next thing up the chain is Reaper. I'm recording into Reaper right now, and I'm going to show you. And this is off, so it's not working. Okay, now let's try again. And then, of course, the next thing up the chain is Reaper. I'm recording into Reaper right now, and I'm going to show you the things that I do with the signal chain. So you can see that it starts working and it hears some of the sound, and then it adjusts, and then it gives you a reading. I'm around minus 14, not exactly, and my true peaks are far from clipping, so this is fine. It also means that I don't have a lot of dynamic range, but that's just because I'm not screaming into the microphone, but it's fine. So that is the end of my FX chain. That's what I do. I just looked at this when I set everything up, and I also left it here in the master chain just because I thought it would be nice to have this for reference if I'm sometimes tweaking things, but really I don't look at this often when I'm editing. I just used it when I was coming up with FXChain. I checked that everything was okay. From time to time, I do come back here and check, but that's all. That's it. That's my FXChain. That's what you need to replicate my sound. Thank you, Angelo, for asking this question. Thank you for noticing the sound. Thank you for appreciating this. I hope you learned something from this video. I hope that you all can get better sound by using Reaper and these tools I talked about. If you don't have the money to spend on RX, don't do it. It's not that important. The most important things are EQ, compression, limiter, and especially room treatment, good mic technique, good cables and everything connected to ground, so that you don't have like those electrical sounds in your recording. So try to get a sound as clean as possible to begin with. I know that I'm not a perfect example. Look at the room in which I'm recording, but anyway, you get the idea. Work with the space that you have and record things, put them out there, iterate, test, experiment. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe if you are interested in these kinds of videos about sound and video and Reaper and programming. I do that in this channel. If you want to support the channel, I do have a Patreon account. I do have a PayPal if you want to do a one-time contribution. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for asking the question, Angelo. I hope you liked this video. I see you on the next one. Bye.